Have you ever been watching a show you liked, maybe even loved, only for the ending to totally change the way you saw the story? Sometimes it's a reveal that puts everything into place and ties up all the remaining threads. And sometimes it's a development that retroactively weakens the whole plot. There's lots of ways to ruin a story, but today I want to focus on a certain category I've noticed for a while, but only recently been able to label under a unifying theme. It's when creators destroy the world's premise with their ending. Changing or removing what makes the world interesting in the first place is one of the most frustrating choices a writer can make. Of course, there are exceptions, which we'll get into later, but generally speaking, I first noticed this problem when it comes to magic in a setting. This Tumblr post pretty much sums it up. Fantasy author. The story ends with the magic going away forever. Don't you find it sad and poetic? Please give me a Pulitzer or at least a Hugo. Me. This is very dumb. I hate you. Bring back the wizards. If you replace magic with whatever part of the world separates it from ours, advanced technology, superpowers, or some other gimmick, this becomes a much wider problem. Warning, there will be spoilers for the endings of Star vs. the Forces of Evil, Mary and the Witch's Flower, Hunger Games, Legend of Korra, Full Metal Alchemist, and Madoka Magica, as I discuss the wrong and right ways to handle this concept. One of the most infamous examples of all the magic goes away forever was the cartoon Star vs. the Forces of Evil. The main character Star realizes that magic is the source of all their problems, and with the help of her family, destroys it. The issue is, the show never portrays magic as a major problem before the ending. In fact, it was a fundamental part of people's lives, sometimes quite literally. Magical people were killed when magic was destroyed, including several major characters. Not to mention the indirect fallout that would result from taking away such a major power source throughout the multiverse. Meanwhile, this is presented as necessary because of a local threat on Star's world, Muni. On the one hand, you have the entire multiverse filled with thousands, maybe more worlds, all now deprived of magic. And on the other hand, you have Star's world, which, yes, is facing a major threat, but honestly, it feels like they faced worse before. It just isn't equal sacrifice to the problem. Not only was it unsatisfying on a narrative level, it makes no sense on a logical level. Next, I want to talk about Mary and the Witch's Flower. If you haven't seen it, I'm about to spoil the ending, so go watch it. It's even on Netflix for US watchers. It's a great film made by people who used to work for Studio Ghibli, if you've ever seen those films, and is both beautifully animated and filled with plenty of charm and character. So go watch it. The ending did have a similar problem in my opinion, even if at least it had a point it was trying to make. In this movie, magic is supposed to represent easy shortcuts or magical thinking, and is replaced with pure hard work. This is revealed in interviews from the creators. But within the world, that's not so clear. Magic is what introduces Mary, and us as the audience, to the beautiful world of the film. It allows her to discover all sorts of beautiful and amazing things. Exactly the kind of stuff that appeals to fantasy lovers, as well as helping her out time and time again. The film does not do a good job proving that magic in general is a problem, just that a couple of people in particular were misusing it. When Mary throws away the last of the magic, it just seems like a bit of a shoehorned in message. On the other hand, take the Hunger Games. The whole goal in the Hunger Games is to destroy the system. Even though the games are part of the premise and do add to some of the interest of the world, you don't feel disappointed when they're disbanded, quite the opposite. The games are obviously harmful from the get-go. The idea of destroying the premise doesn't necessarily have to mean the whole story, but can apply to a significant piece of it. For instance, let's talk about Legend of Korra. In Korra's fight against Vaatu, the big bad evil spirit, her connection to the past avatars is destroyed. This past lives connection is the core concept for how the avatar works. But this loss wasn't a part of some important sacrifice used to make a point, or even explored as an interesting problem. It was just to make one fight seem extra difficult, and after this season, it's rarely if ever brought up. Yet this would change everything going forward. It's destroying the foundation that Avatar: The Last Airbender built, and for what? Drama? A better example for how to make this kind of loss meaningful is in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. At the very end of the series, Edward sacrifices his alchemy to save his brother. Though it is a sacrifice, and you might feel sorry he had to lose it, it makes sense. It's clearly presented as overall a win for him. Alchemy has had major downsides throughout the show, directly leading to all of the major conflicts. Edward giving up alchemy is also a moment of growth for a character who based a lot of his self-worth on his skill with alchemy. It shows that other people and our relationships with them are more important than power. There's also another way to handle a story where part of the premise causes suffering. Removing the part that causes the suffering, while leaving the rest of the premise mostly intact. Take Madoka Magica, a famous magical girl anime. It is well known for its subversion of the genre, which usually has a lighthearted and optimistic tone. In Madoka Magica, becoming a magical girl turns out to have terrible consequences, which I won't get into here. But at the end of the series, the main character makes a sacrifice to completely change these consequences, while still allowing magical girls to exist. Personally, I found this ending bittersweet, but satisfying. Seeing the show's popularity, many other people seem to agree as well. Given that alternatives exist, it makes instances where creators thoughtlessly destroy the premise even more frustrating. So why do they do it at all? Well, as I've mentioned, there are many cases where destroying the premise is actually a satisfying part of the story. In other cases, there may have been an intended message, but they simply fail to follow through on it. Unfortunately, there are also more superficial reasons. By changing the world at such a deep level, it does create a dramatic twist. Think about the now infamous last season of Game of Thrones, which threw in twist after twist to the point that nothing made sense and characters were completely inconsistent. Some writers are so focused on making their story interesting, they don't consider whether it will be enjoyable. I wonder if it doesn't go even deeper than that, though. In many cases, these stories seem almost embarrassed with themselves, with magic and superpowers and other fantasies. As if when stories rid themselves of these things, they become more mature, more grown up. The characters had their adventures, and now they need to face a realistic world. Realism has its place, but you know what? I don't think it's immature to want to take a vacation from the world we're living in right now. Sometimes I just want to enjoy a story where witches call down lightning and superheroes save the day. There's nothing wrong with something unrealistic, because in a good story, there is still a core that is true. These worlds give people inspiration to build a better world here, and honestly, they're just a lot of fun. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. We're still a small channel, so if you'd consider giving us a subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Thanks again for watching.